Hey everyone, Mr. Sujano here, your source for gaming tech, emulation, and open source news. Let's get started. Alright, to kick things off, we're talking about the absolute biggest piece of news in the gaming industry yesterday, and that was the reveal and in detail look at the Nintendo Switch 2. Nintendo had a direct. I do recommend checking it out if you're interested, and like everything we talk about, links are in the description below right at the bottom. This direct was pretty big. So a couple of high-level things. First and foremost, the price of the Switch 2 is going to be about $449.99 USD, so $450. In Canada, that translates to about $630 overall. And it will be live as of June 5th. That's when the Switch 2 is releasing worldwide, but pre-orders are already up. Now, scalpers are probably going to be all over the pre-orders at retail stores, and Nintendo is trying to do something as well to encourage sales and purchasing a Switch directly from Nintendo as opposed to a retail store. It doesn't give you a price discount, but it might give you a chance at snagging one of these if you can't from a pre-order. So this is right from Nintendo's website, and they say sign in with your Nintendo account and register your interest in purchasing a Nintendo Switch 2 system and select accessories from the official My Nintendo store. Now you will need an NSO account with a minimum of 12 months of paid membership and a minimum of 50 total gameplay hours. These pre-orders are on a first-come, first-served basis, so there's no guarantee you will get a pre-order on these, and invitations are non-transferable. Now, this may be a good option if you're desperate to get your hands on a Switch 2 and haven't been able to through a retail store. It's being reported that the Switch 2 will have a 5,220 milliamp hour battery, which is close to 1,000 milliamp hours over the existing Switch. The existing Switch has 4,310 milliamp hours, so like 900 give or take. And on top of that here, it will charge in about 3 hours in sleep mode. Now, although the Switch 2 has a bigger battery and is faster charging, some people might be disappointed about the battery life. It's stated that the battery life will be between 2 and 6.5 hours, which is less than the existing Switch. The existing Switch is rated between 4.5 and 9 hours, and the Switch Lite is between 3 and 7 hours. And that may be because of the better processor and bigger screen. The screen on the Switch OLED is 7.9 inches, which is 0.9 inches more than the Switch OLED. It's 1080p at 120 Hz. The Joy-Cons on these are said to last about 20 hours overall as well. The new dock does have 4K support, and interestingly, it also has a built-in fan. So while this is docked to the TV, you can crank things up to 4K support, and fortunately, the Switch will stay cool while you do it, or at least hopefully. I'm assuming the fan is pretty effective. The rumors are true. The C button does something, and the C button is for game chat. There is going to be a Nintendo Switch camera, and yeah, you can use it to game with friends. The game chat, I think, will be restricted to NSO after about a year. I believe it's free until March 26th or March 2026. And then it will be part of NSO strictly. And double checking on my dates here, and yeah, March 31st, 2026 is when it will be open for, and then it will be hidden behind NSO, which kind of makes sense considering it needs an online connection and it's an online feature. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm not really a fan of the Switch 2 camera here, but it seems Nintendo has some tricks up their sleeve because it looks like they're going to be coming out with a Piranha Plant camera as well. And I think some people may buy the Piranha Plant camera just because it looks cool overall, and I'm curious to see if they come out with others too. I would assume they would. Maybe a Zelda-themed camera, maybe a Donkey Kong-themed camera, who knows? On top of that, there were a whole bunch of game announcements for the Switch 2, including Elden Ring. And also, Hollow Knight Silksong made an appearance. I'm not going to lie here, this may have been one of the most exciting things about the entire presentation, and that's because I didn't know if the game still actually was going to exist. Either way, here it does seem like an overall good presentation. A lot of people seem to be very excited about a lot of elements of it. I mean, there's some big games that seem to be hitting the Switch, including stuff like Cyberpunk. Some of these games are not necessarily new, but at the same time here, it's seemingly like they're trying to target an audience that is not necessarily the youngest anymore. Even stuff like Street Fighter 6 is heading to the Switch 2, including Amiibo. If you're a fan of Kirby, if you're a fan of racing, you may be a fan of this game here, which is Kirby's Air Ride. And that was also announced during the presentation. Donkey Kong gets a new look and feel with a brand new platformer here called Donkey Kong Bonanza. Some people seem to be a little up in arms about Donkey Kong's new look, although I think it's absolutely fine and kind of just a natural progression for the character. Let me know your thoughts about that one. Nintendo releases their own version of Forza Horizon here, just a little bit. Mario Kart World is an open-world racing game with, I would say, very similar elements and very different elements than something like Forza Horizon. And as absolutely everyone predicted, GameCube is headed to NSO. The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom will be receiving Switch 2 enhanced editions. Now, from my understanding, these enhanced editions are not a free upgrade if you already own the game. I think you will have to pay a premium in order to upgrade them. And these upgrades include better visuals and smoother frame rates. There's going to be a brand new Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment, and there's going to be even more games here for the Switch. I would say overall it was a pretty darn good Nintendo Direct, and also I'm not interested in pre-ordering the Switch 2. I don't know about you, but I would be willing to hold off here until I see a discount or maybe just some revisions from the initial version. I don't know yet, but I didn't see anything that just jumped out at me that I needed to pre-order a Switch 2. But let me know your thoughts about the Nintendo Direct in the comments below and whether or not you're interested in ordering a Nintendo Switch 2. Just nothing jumped out at me, and I was really surprised about that. Maybe it was the price. I mean, in Canada, $630 is quite a lot of money. I'm much happier with something like the Steam Deck. And I am a big fan of Nintendo games. I'm a huge fan of Zelda games. But nothing just seemed to jump out at me that I needed to order a Switch 2. On a side note here, if you're in Japan, it seems that you can get a Switch 2 on a discount, but it will be region locked. It's being reported that Nintendo will sell a cheaper $330 Switch 2 in Japan. And on a side note, Ridge Racer was also announced to be hitting the Nintendo Switch 2 when it releases, which I think marks the first time this game is ever on a home console. Anyways, here, I am very curious to hear your opinions about the Switch 2, whether or not you're interested in pre-ordering, and what your thoughts were about the Nintendo Direct. Maybe what's also souring me on pre-ordering a Switch 2 is the fact that Nintendo has been very active in the emulation scene. I don't know, maybe that's irrelevant. I've got no idea here. Oh, and on a side note here, it's being reported that Nintendo considered calling the Switch 2 the Super Nintendo Switch. And I still think that's a missed opportunity and something that Nintendo should have done here. But anyways, they didn't call this thing the Super Nintendo Switch because the SNES was not compatible with NES games. And they didn't want consumers to make the mistake thinking that the Switch 2 was not compatible with Switch games. I don't think consumers would make that mistake at all, but who knows here. But moving on, and next up, we're talking about emulation and retro achievements. And if you're a fan of retro achievements, you're probably going to be a big fan of this news, especially if you use certain emulators. I recommend checking out this post over on the Retro Achievements forum for even more details. But Nether SX2, which is the unofficial continuation of Aether SX2, it's a patch for Aether SX2 which enhances it and continues on development. Nether SX2 is now going to be compatible with retro achievements in hardcore mode. So if you like to use those hardcore achievements or like to get those hardcore achievements, well, you still can in Nether SX2. And speaking about unofficial stuff, next up we're talking about an unofficial version of Proton called GE Proton. GE stands for Subscribe to Mr. Sujano, or Glorious Egg Roll, depending on how you wanted to interpret that. Anyways, here, GE Proton just got a brand new update, and for those who may be unaware, this is a custom version of Proton that allows some games to be playable. Glorious Egg Roll is the person behind Nobara Linux, and they know a thing or two here. It's usually recommended to use the official version of Proton, but if you've got a specific game that requires GE Proton, then use GE Proton. So at the time of filming, GE Proton 927 is the latest update, and this one has a whole bunch of different updates and a bunch of fixes here, including stuff for Ubisoft Connect. And as for what games to use Proton GE on, my rule of thumb is simple. Try Proton Experimental. If it doesn't work, then try Proton GE and maybe the game will work. Or if the game is running poorly, maybe try Proton GE and maybe that game will run a little bit better. It's not guaranteed, but I've had some success booting up some games with Proton GE versus Proton Experimental. Next up, we're talking about the Ship of Harkinian, which is an unofficial Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time PC port. We've talked about this one in the past on the channel, and it just got a big brand new update. So at the time of filming, Blair Alpha 9.0.0 is the latest update, and if you're a fan of randomizers, you're really going to be a fan of this update. There's a whole bunch of stuff they've added into the randomizer here, and this randomizer seems very robust. And one of the big things is blazing fast seed generation. Additionally here, there's a whole bunch of new things like starting heart count that's been implemented. There's new shuffles. If you hit the escape key, it brings up a new menu. There's been tweaks, fixes, and even more. I mean, there's mouse input support. There's swim speed modifiers. There's new controller framework. There's pause menu warping, GameCube controller support for Linux, and even more. This is a huge update. But anyways, that is all I've got for you in this one. Straight to the point, all stuff and no fluff. Whether you love them or hate them, Nintendo dominated the news, and understandably so. We're going to see GTA 6 dominate the news later on in the year. Let me know your thoughts about anything we talked about in the comments below. If you like this video, leave a like. If you didn't like this video, leave a like. Hit that subscribe button, check out my other videos. Don't tempt fate, save your state, and I'll see you tomorrow.